Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from I don't even remember the whole spiel, the origins of Star Trek from
The early
CB.
days on NBC to this future are on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between.
Thank you very
Wow.
much. My name is Alan, and it is my privilege to introduce my co-host Keith Johnson
Bacon, salty and crispy, sweet and delicious.
and Veronica Daschel.
Hi.
And we are joined by a very special guest today, Michael Scott Phillips. How's it going, Michael?
Oh, just fine.
Welcome, Michael.
All right. So
Nice to see you, Keith.
as you see, Chuck is not with us this week, but we will muddle through. Clearly, I was not prepared to do an intro like I thought I was because I'd messed it all up, but that's okay. So, Michael, thank you for sitting in with us tonight. We're looking forward to having you chat with us about this week's episode.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Don't lay your hand out
spoil
too
it.
soon, man. So before
Well, I
we
could have
get,
enjoyed hating it.
no,
I could have
okay.
enjoyed hating it. It's
That's
possible
true.
that I could have enjoyed hating it. So,
People do.
people do.
Do.
'Cause they're
Okay, so
crazy.
before we get started, Michael, tell us a little bit about your history with Star Trek. When did you start watching Trek? What is your favorite series? How long you've been watching? All that stuff.
Gosh, that really dates me. I honestly, I've had debates about this with my brother, which we saw first, the original run of the animated series or the original series in syndication. But
Right.
it would have been about 74, 75. I'm not really sure. I just remember where I was living when I saw it. And that's kind of how I know when it was. So the first, I'm going to just say the original series, though.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what I'm
Basically
going
the
to
same
say.
thing.
Yeah. So, and I guess my favorite series is the original series. Really, I mean, I certainly I love TNG, and I love Strange New Worlds. I have not seen enough of Deep Space Nine and Voyager to really feel like I can say where they rank in my estimation. I need to catch up on those.
Off the show.
But off the get out of here. Bye. No. Yeah, I understand. I understand.
No,
I went through a little anti Star Trek phase in the '90s for some reason, and I feel stupid about it now. But it's like, well, I was just trying to be cool or something. I don't know.
Right. I know how that is.
What was it? Were you tired of the shows? Did you think something was better, like Star Wars or Farscape or Babylon 5 or something?
Yeah, I did love Babylon 5. That's true. I did love Babylon 5, and I kind of was on the Babylon 5 side in that little war between those two series at the
Right.
time. But I mean, I was like 23 years old or whatever. I don't know. I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, I've gone back to them recently, and I'm still catching up with them. I was hoping they go to HD. They somehow restore them into HD so I could watch them like that, and I kept holding out for that because everybody kept saying that it was going to happen,
Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
and it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So I went ahead
No.
and started watching them again. Or watching them for the first time.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
You are an author, and you have a new book out. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, I started writing seriously about 6 years ago, but I really had been writing most of my life. I mean, I've written like newsletters and TV and movie reviews since my college days, which again kind of dates me late 80s. But I didn't really start seriously writing until about 2017. I had been suffering from some disabilities for a while, and it was something I wanted to get into as a way of making money that would where I could kind of work around the problems I was having. So I really started with a novel idea I had in 2017, and I went from there. And I've been writing a space opera novel series. So anybody who's interested in Star Trek is probably going to like them. I like to think they're pretty original, but it's hard to do anything original these days. So there are going to be some things that are going to remind people of Star Trek or whatever. So yeah, I wrote a book on the classic TV series, The Avengers and the New Avengers, which is called Quite Fantastic: The Avengers for Modern Viewers, and it's a pretty popular book in the genre, I'd say. And of course, the sci-fi series, the first novel in the series is called Beyond the Empyrean. And it's about a genetically engineered miner on a planet in the star system of Maya, which is out there in the Pleiades system. And he's living a very oppressed life because of, well, not because of his genetic engineered status, but because this society is just very, very oppressive, very dystopian. And so he's basically trapped in this system where he has to work as a miner in order to earn off the modifications that he's received. But at the same time, the modifications are necessary to do the mining work because it's on a heavy gravity world. So it's sort of a catch-22 situation. You have to get a job, so you have to get modified. So then you have to pay off the modifications, and it takes 10, 20 years, and they never let you off the hook. So, and it's this evil oligarchy that's controlling everything. So it's about his story and how he breaks out of that. And I don't want to spoil too much beyond that.
Well, no, of course not.
It's interesting you talk about genetic engineering because we talk about genetic engineering so much when we discuss Star Trek. Obviously, that just came up in Strange New Worlds, and it's a huge issue with Deep Space Nine. I won't spoil it, but I think realistically, if humanity ever gets to the stars, I think that we are going to be genetically engineering because if you think about, like, I was just listening to a program last night that talked about how we could terraform Mars. And it talks about that, honestly, with some really sophisticated super science, but possible science, you could terraform Mars in somewhere between 100 to 1,000 years. And I was thinking about that. I thought, okay, great. If you could make Mars have oxygen, nitrogen atmosphere and water and protect us from cosmic radiation, it still has way less gravity than Earth. And the bottom line is the human body doesn't do well in lower gravity. The heart gets bigger, the bones start decalcifying. And so I think, to your point, if you go out into space, you're going to find planets that are going to be heavy gravity, lower gravity, less oxygen, more radiation. I think we'll probably genetically engineer ourselves because otherwise we're just going to mutate anyway.
Yeah.
That's true.
Right. That's true. And I did weave a lot of that into the story because there's a lot of things about the character's appearance that would be different, but it's all design modifications that are allowing him to survive on this planet. Like he has sort of a bronzy, almost sort of orangey colored skin because it's the light of the sun is very blue. And you know how you have glasses with blue blocking lenses on them, for like reading off a screen. Well, his lenses are literally modified so that they do that because the light is so harsh and blue. So it, he would turn his eyes toward you and they would kind of flash blue. And it would look very strange to people. And he also has like tapetum lucidum, like animals do, so he can see in the dark and in a mining environment. So there's a lot of things about him that would look quite strange and would not enable him to pass as an ordinary person. So I was thinking about a lot of those things, and it was kind of interesting that they decided to include Una in this new series and make her a genetically modified person because it's some things about her really do remind me of my own character, and including the fact that he has like caretaker genes, which are actually modified immune cells. He's essentially a cyborg, but it's cyborg on the molecular level. His immune cells are the cyborgs. And they race around and they do repairs, and he actually sometimes when he's healing, it glows. There's a light to it, and that very much is something that when Una did that in the show, it reminded me very much of that. So
that's hilarious.
Clearly,
obviously they read your book,
right? They ripped my idea off.
Absolutely.
No, I don't mean that. It's just interesting because these ideas are everywhere, and it's very, very hard to find something original. But we try our best.
All right. So what's a website that people can go to find more info about the book? MichaelScottPhillipsAuthor.com. It's kind of long, but it's my name, author, AUTHOR.com. Sweet.
Not Arthur, author.
Right.
Author. I figure I should know how to spell that word.
Exactly. Well, Keith, do we have any Trek history?
I
this
didn't
week?
do any. I didn't do any history this week because we were going to talk to
Okay.
Michael and talk about the show. So
Okay.
I didn't do any. You're
All right.
special, Michael.
Oh, wow. I'm
Nothing
honored.
happened this week.
All right, then at this point, we will take a quick break for those of you who are listening on the podcast. And we will promote a fellow ESO network show, and we'll be right back. But if you're watching live, then we're going to just plow on through. Veronica, do you want to give us a spoiler alert?
Yes, I'm moving the microphone away from my face.
Nice.
It's for those of you who can't see it. Spoilers! 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 Spoilers!
Oh my gosh.
Right,
I
you
think
remind
I
me
got
of you remind me of Eddie Murphy doing the thing where he was going
No.
Hercules, Hercules,
No.
Hercules.
No.
Well, that
Sorry.
means that it is time to talk about episode 5 of season 2 of Strange New Worlds, Charades. And that also means that we are now halfway through the season.
Boo.
That's
Wow.
Oh,
crazy.
yes. That's
Wow,
true.
that's the point. Yeah, I've all these years and decades, I'm still conditioned. Given when I was raised, because Michael, I got several years on you. I'm still conditioned for 25, 26, 27 episodes or
Yeah.
something.
I know.
So
Yeah.
unless it's British, or Netflix. So when you tell
Yeah.
me that, like, holy crap, you're right. Halfway over now, we've got a writer's strike and an actor's strike. So, oh boy.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so first let's just start with general impressions. What did you think of this episode?
It was
Good,
hilarious.
bad, in between, somewhere?
I loved it
Veronica, why
so
don't you kick?
much.
Now you can kick us off. Go.
Yeah, I loved
Yay.
it so much.
Okay.
It was fun, and all of Spock's reactions to everything with him as a human was hilarious. And I really enjoyed watching Ethan Peck be Spock as a human. It was very enjoyable to watch.
Awesome. Michael, what'd you think about it?
I felt very similar to Veronica. I really love this episode. I loved Spock Amok last year. That was one of my favorite episodes, and I like this sort of humor. I don't like the sort of I Mud sort of humor, but I do like this kind of slightly sardonic, witty, more subtle humor. And I'll just say this. I mean, whether people like it or not, at least I feel like they're forging new ground. You know what I'm saying? Because, this is, it's a comedy episode, but it's kind of got its own unique take. It's this weird, wacky sort of Vulcan hijinks episode that we get every year. And so I want to see more. I want to see more. I really do.
All right, Keith.
I am really divided. I laughed and chuckled all the way through it, even though, as I said all the time, y'all know I hate the Kirks on the show, I hate the Pring on the show, and I hate the Chapel Spock thing. But I laughed and had a really good time. And literally, the very last scene almost completely ruined the entire episode for me. We'll have to get to that.
Oh dear.
So it's like I watch it again, and that last scene, because that last scene became the apotheosis of everything I don't like about new Trek writers. And up until then, I was okay. So overall, I like it. It's absolutely an episode I could watch again. It was fun. I agree. It was really fun.
Okay. I mostly agree with you. I think I had a great time watching it. I thought the cast was fantastic. And a lot of people, present company included, may have problems with T'Pring and the Kirks and all that stuff. I don't really mind that stuff so much. I'm not so tied to, that I have to not, I don't know, but I didn't mind it. I found a lot of really interesting stuff in it, though, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But first, I want to say that for anybody who's watching live, just drop a comment or a question in the chat bar wherever you're watching, YouTube or Facebook, and let us know what you thought about it. We want to know if you liked it, if you didn't like it, what you liked about it. Anything that confused you and you have a question about it, just let us know. All right. So for those of you on the panel who enjoyed it, what were some of the specific points that you really liked?
Bacon.
I mean, who doesn't love bacon? But okay, but isn't he vegetarian?
Yes, he is.
I mean, aren't predominantly the Vulcan society is vegan or vegetarian, right? So I thought that, I mean, I liked the bacon thing, but I thought that they would actually say something about that. Like, wait a minute,
I did too.
Spock, you're vegetarian.
I thought they were going to say something about that too, and I guess it's 100% his pure human side, because he was even asking what it was, and actually, yeah, he probably well, I'm not going to say he should get sick. That's humans. Yeah, I thought the same thing, that he really wouldn't be eating bacon, but it was kind of a funny scene though.
He did get sick though.
He did.
Yeah,
he did get
well,
nauseous.
that's true. One thing I did like about it, like I said, the reason I was able to basically kind of put my standard objections on hold and enjoy it is this we've said this before, this cast is very comfortable. They feel much more comfortable than, say, Discovery did, or the first 2 seasons of Picard. And a lot of that is the writing. It is also sometimes, frankly, the actors that you choose and how they all gel together. I was listening to some podcasts. I've been listening to the podcast with Dominic Keating and Connor Trenier, who played Malcolm and Trip on Enterprise. And Jeffrey Combs has been on there, and the Billingsley, who played Dr. Phlox. And I tell you, and I've heard this from this show, Quantum Leap, and NCIS, Scott Bakula, people say that man literally is a prince. They talk about he's such a great person. Mm-hmm. And I think he held Enterprise together as well as it's been held together. I'm saying all this for a reason. I'm hearing the same thing about Anson Mount. They say he kind of holds that show together. He's a nice guy, and he helps the younger people. And you can feel that cast feels at ease. So when they do work together, when they're having dinner in this cabin, or when they're on a mission together, they have an ease with each other that I kind of haven't seen since maybe the way the Deep Space Nine people work together toward the end. But the cast feels like they've been together longer than just a season and a half. And I do like that. Mm-hmm. And they can do serious stuff, and they can do comedy as well. And it works better than a lot of other series.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody loves Space Daddy.
Yep.
I mean, what's not to love? Anyway, Veronica, what do you have to say?
So I was thinking back to when Ethan Peck was at Dragon Con the year after they had appeared on Discovery. And he was still there on a Monday. So we had gone back and to see him with our Spock puppet, and we have one of our bits is Spock is in retirement, so he has a beard, and we found it really hilarious that Ethan Peck's Spock, when we first met him, had a beard. So we brought our little bearded Spock to meet him, and he was all excited about this, and he was like, "Oh, can I get a picture with him?" And we're like, "Yes." Nice. So he's a really down to earth person too, and he was so excited just to be there. And talk to people. He was really fantastic. And watching this reminded me of interacting with Ethan Peck himself.
Okay. That's cool.
They all seem like good people, nice people, and they all seem like they truly get along and are happy to be there. And it absolutely comes across on screen.
Yeah. I mean, you see that with them, with each other, but at the same time, you see it individually. And like, if you follow any of them on Twitter, they just seem like they really come across like they love what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, they're excited about it and they're happy about it. And they enjoy engaging fans who love it as well. And I think that makes so much difference, you know?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That chemistry really comes across on screen.
Right. I think so too.
All right, so we have dual storylines this week, and they're both about encounters with Vulcan rituals and Vulcan expectations and Vulcan judgment. So let's talk first about the Spock situation. What did you think, first of all, of a human Spock?
He was a lot.
I was a little worried at first because it pinged me with data from Generations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I felt like they were going for, and that became too much. I love that film, but I felt like that part of it just went on too dang long, and it became tedious. And I was like, "Please stop." But here, I think they stopped at exactly the right point, like literally on all his dialogue beats. You know, it's like he would take it up to, you know, just where it's almost too much, and then he'd come back. and then they kept that going, the whole awkward teenage phase going on just long enough until you were about to get tired of it. And then they stopped and they went on to act 2. So I thought it was pretty close to perfectly handled. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I could also see Brent Spiner just like pushing it to that edge and then him wanting to go the 15 steps further.
Also the line, what was it? It was the WTF line.
Oh,
It
right.
reminded me of Generations, where he says, "Oh, what does he say? Oh, SHIT." I can't remember.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely pinged my nostalgia.
Right.
Yeah, I guess the what the F was attributed to the fact that he was human at that point in time.
Yes.
Yeah, because I wrote, well, when he say that, then I thought, well, if he's human, his emotions come into play. I think so. It's funny because the whole point of him being split or reorganized into complete human, it's really ridiculous as a plot. And then I thought, except Kirk was split into 2 on a transporter in the original series, and B'Elanna Torres was split into a Klingon and a human in Voyager. And on, and Odo became fully human in Deep Space Nine. No spoilers for Hal. So it's not exactly like this hasn't been done before in Star Trek.
Right.
One thing I did laugh at was when they went into that space warp tunnel, and he gets redone. And when they literally called the people, or they called that race yellow, literally came off like some functionary, like some customer support person that is not helping.
Totally.
Yeah, because literally over and over, Liel's like, look, we did what we need to do. No need to call further. Is he dead? Is he alive? He's alive. Okay, bye. It was hilarious. Anybody who's called that.
to the point where they're bringing up, you fixed Spock wrong.
Yes.
And they're like, complaints outside the service period are highly irregular.
Yes.
I thought that was adorable.
And Nurse Chapel bringing her best, "I need to speak to the manager" energy.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yes, that was really
My
funny.
boyfriend's at stake here. You got to sort this
Basically.
mess out.
Right. One of my favorite scenes in the show, and I kind of felt differently about it, but I still loved watching it play out, was the 3 crew members trying to teach Spock how to be Spock, and they sort of do their own impressions of him. I thought that was hilarious. And he's like, do I really sound like that? And they're all like, yes.
Yeah, I agree. This is an episode where, I guess I'm talking to myself, you got to let go of some of the stuff, because everything, like you said, I'm like, for example, I was like, well, Spock wouldn't say what the F. And then I'm like, okay, I know he's human, but they wouldn't have to teach him to be Vulcan because he remembers. But then I was like, okay,
That's
just let it
exactly,
go.
that's exactly why I had a little bit of a problem with that scene.
Yeah.
It's not like he doesn't know who he used to be.
Right.
But what they had to get him to do was to like not emotionally react to stuff going on around him.
Yeah, and I did laugh when his emotions started getting out of hand, like when he would get the joke and he was like, he kept really going on almost like he was drunk, and he would go, oh, har, 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 and he was hitting people.
Right.
And the whole thing with Kirk. The whole thing with Kirk's brother, when he kept that glass and the crumbs on the table, they were ticking him off when he was a Vulcan and he wouldn't say anything. But then toward the end, he's basically like the attack the guy. I thought that's great.
I will say that if Spock, when he was actually Spock, at the beginning of the episode, when he's doing his ship's log, and he is just, bothered to the point where he gets up and cleans the cup and the saucer away, and then notices crumbs, that Spock would not have just brushed the crumbs onto the floor.
Yeah.
That would have bothered him just as much.
Right.
I
think he would have said something.
Oh dear.
Oh dear, Keith.
Oh, he's back.
Oh shit.
Oh, he's gone again.
There we go. Sorry, I didn't mean to say shit.
That's okay. It's weird because I've got a signal, but okay.
Oh well, that's
I'm
okay.
still
We're
here.
here now.
It's an anomaly. But I did think that the stuff with Ethan Peck was funny. I laughed at a lot of the stuff with him.
Yeah.
I thought that was good.
I'm gonna be a slightly contrarian here toward what Michael was saying earlier. this reminded me too much of Spock Amok from last season. It's almost like they're sort of playing the same, because there was, I don't remember if it was that episode or a different one, where the episode starts with him having a dream about him being human and not being able to fit in with the Vulcan rituals and stuff. And then they had the whole like Katra swap episode. And I just felt like maybe this was like, we don't need to do another one of these next year. You know what I mean? It's almost like, okay, we've seen it now. Let's don't repeat it again. And I know that's different from what Michael's reaction to it was, but
well, if this is about our window into Vulcan society, I mean, there is a place for it. I mean, they have to find some other way to get that done.
Some other way, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think Vandy Beth said that on the Facebook group as well. Said the same thing as you said, Alan. That it was too much of a callback to the same type of episode from last year.
Okay.
I also think they're probably not going to do something like this again, because it seems like he and T'Pring are like basically on a break until she calls him to Vulcan in the original series. Is what it seems like it's going to happen.
Maybe. That seems like a setup, exactly like you were saying, but I'll bet you it won't take that long. I bet you she'll be back later this season, if not just next season.
Yeah, I'm a little confused at the whole thing about well, she asked him to marry her, so I guess that's the whole point. So I think they color in the margins of what the original series did. So I guess that's the whole point. Because at first I was thinking, well, wait a minute, it's going to be, I guess, 7 years, something like that, before he goes back, when he basically comes under the blood fever, the Amaka time. But I guess they're setting this up, as you say, to where they're going to have a break, because again, in my original series watching, I think the assumption was, but they never said it, which is what the new track, they drive into these plot holes. They never said that he hadn't seen her since they were children, but you assumed that he hadn't seen her since they were children.
Yeah.
And it's just, but then since they never truly said it, and I actually find myself doing weird things now. This is so strange. I keep finding myself looking to see, does Uhura ever see Spock and T'Pring together on the Enterprise? Because in the original series, she literally asked him who T'Pring was. So I keep playing this game and trying to catch them.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, because remember they did the whole Spock parting and never parting and always never parted, never and always touching and touched. And Uhura said, "She's lovely, Mr. Spock. Who is she?" And Spock said, "That is T'Pring, my wife." And everybody on the bridge is like, "Oh, what?" Including their Chapel. But I guess, they're trying to get around that. So I keep looking for stuff like that. Right. It's another thing. It's a personal thing. I don't like T'Pring being used this much. I just don't. That's me. But I like the actress.
Yeah.
And I guess she's going to have growth, because T'Pring's not nearly as strong and as fierce here as she is in the original series.
Yeah. Agreed.
Well, she's pissed off later.
Oh boy, she's good in that original
He's like
series.
And I have a theory about that. I think I might know where they're going with this.
All right, let's lay it on us.
Yeah.
Well, we can already see that Spock is going through a more emotional phase. I mean, he had that whole thing where these blocks got broken, and he's trying to restore them and that sort of thing. And I guess that's a callback to the Cage, where he like smiles broadly and says "the women" and that sort of thing, and he's sort of more emotional.
Right.
Yeah.
So obviously that's where they're going. So he's more emotional, and that kind of explains how he could have this romance with Nurse Chapel. And then T'Pring finds out about it, and she's really pissed, and she says, "You're being too emotional. You've got to go back to Vulcan and study and train and become more Vulcan-like so we can get married." Maybe her mother gets really pissed off about it. Who knows? And then he puts all those emotions back in the bottle, and poor Nurse Chapel's just left to pine over him. And that's how you get to where they are in the original series. Yeah. With Spock being much more, closed off, and Nurse Chapel just sort of like, she can't do anything about it. She's kind of trapped in the situation where she has these feelings and they can't be, reciprocated. Yeah. And then of course the whole divorce happens with T'Pring.
Well, also, and that's a point, Michael, because I have that same thought, which is, again, going back to the original series, Spock and Chapel act like they barely know each other. And she obviously still loves him, but he's always keeping the distance. But also, in the original series, they said that she actually came on the Enterprise, which I guess has now came back to the Enterprise, because she wanted to go find Dr. Corby, who was her fiance. So sometime between now and the original series episodes, she's got to leave the ship or somehow fall in love with Corby, unless they're going to change that. And I thought that y'all catch that they mentioned Dr. Corby earlier on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Corby's 3 laws of whatever archaeology.
Right.
So that's the guy who's going to become her great love, and then go on. My wife's not listening. And then go on to be in an episode with literally one of the prettiest women in Star Trek history, Andrea the android. So
wow.
So I am curious how they're going to connect all that.
Okay, I'm gonna pivot just a slight bit here. I'm gonna stay on the Spock story thread that we're talking about, but we get the return of Mia Kirshner from Discovery as Amanda. This is her first time appearing on Strange New Worlds. I love her.
She was fantastic.
I love her, Amanda. I thought she was one of the great additions to Discovery when she was on. And, you know, Michael earlier was talking about that window into Vulcan society. And I think the stuff that we learned about Amanda in this episode is exactly that. I'm fascinated by some of the stuff that she was saying about how she had to put up with stuff, like how she had to adapt to live on Vulcan. And I really love, that's probably my favorite part of the episode.
I agree, because they've never told it from her point of view, because in the animated series, when they show young Spock getting teased, remember they said, "Earther, you can't even do a simple neck pinch." And in the Abrams first movies and stuff, you're right, it's always been Spock's pain and his father's disappointment. But following on what you said, Alan, in all those different shows and movies, when they literally call Spock, you know, poisoned and less than Vulcan, where does that come from? Her. But we never get to hear her point of view, because if Spock's being teased, then what is she going through?
Yeah.
Veronica, what did you think about the Amanda scenes?
I loved. Yeah. Oh, you said Veronica. Sorry. You kind of broke up there, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, okay. I really enjoyed it. Her when Spock was trying to pick up that hot pot at first, and she was like, I learned to endure pain, and showed him how she just calmly smiled and touched this scalding hot rock of a pot and just lifted up and calmly poured it and calmly put it back down and calmly clasped her hands together, even though they were probably burned to a crisp.
Yeah. Minimizing pain don't take care of your skin burning. I thought that was my first thought.
And I was wondering if she was going to show Spock her hands.
Yeah.
You know, she would obviously keep them hidden in the ritual when she's, you know, but I was wondering if she, like, here's the proof, buddy. This is what I've been hiding all my life. This is the kind of thing I've had to endure.
Yeah.
So, Michael, what were you going to say about it? Sorry about that.
Well, I was going to say much the same thing. It's like a metaphor for her pain. It doesn't make any sense logically. I mean, you have to burn your hands to make tea on Vulcan. I mean, it's kind of silly. It's not very logical. But, you know, but as a metaphor for pain and a metaphor for Amanda's pain, I think it works really well. Yeah. And the pain of being a human and living on Vulcan and having to learn to hide, you know, pains that maybe Vulcans don't have, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't feel anything, but you do. And you got to hide it just like them. So that's tough.
I loved the scene at the end where Spock defended his mother. I thought that was so touching.
I wondered if Spock would do that, but can we assume it's because he still was turning back to Vulcan, so he was still kind of emotional? Okay, I was wondering about that. At first I was like, well, Spock wouldn't do that, but then he took his plastic ears off, and he still had human ears, and I was at least grateful that he didn't turn back to Vulcan immediately.
Yeah.
Because I literally don't know what kind of injection can rewrite half your DNA, but then she got it from yellow, so I guess it works.
Right. It's one of those magical science things that these Star Trek shows just do. Like time crystals, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Michael, you made a good comment about, you said that Spock's humor almost it threatened to spin out of control. I thought, here we go again. Is there not a movie in history, forget if it's science fiction or not, where you haven't seen the awkward Meet the Parents? And sometimes I wonder if women get upset because the mother-in-law is almost always the one that's like the harridan, and the dad is always cool. And her dad, T'Pring's dad, almost was showing emotion. He's like, "Man, this
I
food is
know.
good." And she's like, "No, it didn't. No, it didn't."
Yeah, I thought
I
exactly
like the
that.
fact that he was like a bit of a henpeck too. You know,
Yeah.
he just what do you deferred to whatever she said. You know, because he didn't want to fight.
Well, there is a matriarchal, essence to the Vulcan society. So maybe
That's
that's a
true.
standard. I don't know.
That's true.
But she definitely was a domineering woman.
Yeah.
She was imposing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, well, T'Pring made it obvious that she was especially difficult because she kept saying she's been so difficult and she's so difficult all the time, and all that sort of thing. So
Right.
Which I found very funny because once her mom came on, that reminded me of the T'Pring in the original series. So obviously, eventually, she becomes her mom.
Oh,
Yeah,
good point.
Yeah, she's going to have to get
Very
some
good
strength. And Michael, you probably don't know about this since you haven't watched DS9, but I found myself comparing T'Pring's mother to, I think her name was Laurel, General Martok's wife, who also has to preside over some wedding stuff, which I won't spoil here for those who haven't seen it. And I found myself comparing those two, a Klingon disapproving potential mother-in-law versus a Vulcan disapproving mother-in-law.
That's exactly what I was thinking of as well. Okay, so let's talk about the other storyline that's going on that's kind of interwoven with this one, and that is Nurse Chapel. She's applying to this program on Vulcan. She's prepping her interview. She's worried over it, and then it doesn't go as well as she hopes. So let's talk about that part first, because I want to get into the yellow and blue stuff in a second. But what did you think about this Chapel? This Chapel who was, wanting to leave the ship. She's wanting to get into this fellowship. She is, working her way toward she's very career minded. What did you think about those scenes?
Veronica?
I mean, I enjoyed watching them. I don't remember Nurse Chapel from the original series enough to make any comparisons, although she was very much just "Oh, Spock, you're so pretty," in the original series from what I remember.
That's about right. That's actually about right. They're not the same character at all.
No, but I really enjoyed watching the character grow, and I really enjoyed the transitions that they did in those opening things of her moving and training with this person and talking with this person, and I really enjoyed the way they did those transitions because it looked like she just whoosh into the next place.
Yeah, I did too. I thought that was really well done. The editing on that was really good.
Yeah.
I wrote down something about that. I wrote down Chapel might have succeeded in her application if she could have talked to Spock about it and learned more about how to deal with Vulcans, because it was the Vulcan arrogance that, ultimately got her turned down.
Yeah.
And so she's fighting this thing where she can't talk to him and she's having to stay away from him, or he's staying away from her, and all this weird stuff is going on. And so she's fighting this battle on her own, and she could have maybe used his help.
Right. At least to have a better idea of what to expect from the interview.
Right.
I agree with that.
Keith, what reminds me of? I agree. I thought it was funny. And I wrote down in my notes, so Vulcans have young little snots too, because that dude, he looked like he was barely out of grad school. So he came off like this little punk, and he was, super arrogant. He was he's literally one of those that was, you can see him going, yeah, she ain't going to make this. I mean, before she even applied, basically. When they saw the application, a human, nah, that ain't happening. So he was such a snot. And I remember in Enterprise, one thing I love about the series Enterprise is they show the Vulcans and the Andorians, who are a passionate warrior race, and the Tellarites, who pretty much live to insult. And Archer, who hated Vulcans pretty much at the start of the series. And I got to tell you, sometimes when you look at Vulcans, you can see why so many people kind of can't stand them.
Yeah.
Because they are arrogant, even at best. Best, they're just arrogant. They get on your nerves. At least with a Klingon, you can go have a drink with them if they don't kill you. And if you get into a fight and you survive, they love you. They're your buddy. But Vulcans, my gosh. Whew.
And also, T'Pring's mom, I mean, I wrote down racist as F. I mean, she was really,
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, so
Yeah.
that's not typical Vulcan. That's kind of especially arrogant for a Vulcan.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so too. And I thought it was funny, but I kind of sort of thought that whole ceremony, I think that felt a little obvious and heavy-handed to me personally. The whole ceremony where you tell people about themselves, that felt like that's something they wrote just so she could basically say, Spock, you suck because your mom sucks. Because, I mean, I did laugh, but I thought, well, I don't know if Vulcans would really have something like that, but
Well,
it was fine.
I thought it was an interesting concept, at least, whether it actually made sense or not, or was expected or not. I thought it was an interesting scene,
Yeah.
but the reason they wrote it though is not for her to say those things. It was to test
Spock.
Spock. It was to see him just
React.
about to explode, but he keeps it in.
Yeah, he
Oh,
held
that
it.
was so good. I thought
held
Ethan
it.
was great in those scenes.
Yeah, and I love the look when Spock revealed that he'd been human the whole time. The look that, again, if you know, I complained about her on the show, I love the look T'Pring gave him. And when you saw that look, you
Yeah.
knew, like, oh boy, there's a conversation coming, because she's looking at him. And then she kept looking at Nurse Chapel and him. It's like, hey, we need to have a conversation.
The other thing that's interesting is that when Spock is going through the steps of the ritual, and T'Pring would sort of like, turn to the side, and she would say, no, don't overdo this because it's got to be right. She is trying to control him exactly the way her mother controls her father.
Mm-hmm.
She is not letting Spock do his own thing. She is laying her expectations onto him, just like her mother.
Yep.
And I think she thinks she's helping him, because she also made a point. She said, have I not told you that I don't mind you being half human? So I think she's trying to help him.
I agree. But it's an interesting parallel.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. What do you think?
But
about that,
ultimately,
Michael?
I think she was right. I mean, she was right to be upset with him, because, I mean, that's something you share in a relationship. And they had that whole body swap in Spock and Mock. So she, she was in on that. And I kind of remember when she arrived, I was like, is he going to tell her? Should he tell her?
Yeah, he should have told her.
And he really should have. I mean, it might have been even been more interesting if he had.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that certainly was his plan. I mean, he was going into that scene with the intention of telling her, and then she said, "Oh, my mother's just driving me crazy, and this is, never going to work or whatever." And then he backed off.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I didn't really pick up on that, but yeah, you're right. That scared him off.
Right. Okay. One thing that I kind of had a problem with in this episode, and that was Chapel and her buddies, stealing a shuttle, going off to a temporal anomaly, and negotiating with an extra dimensional being while Spock and these people are at dinner. Like they're at dinner, and how long did it take to get to this anomaly? How long did it take to, talk Yellow into helping them? How long did it take to get back? How did the injection even work? I mean, how does Yellow prepare an injection? I mean, it just, it was, you don't need it for the story. They're trying to tell an emotional story of, Spock and Chapel, but so you don't need it for the actual narrative that's on screen, but it still just drove me bonkers.
Yeah, my thing with, and I hate to use the term new Trek, because everybody uses new Trek as a pejorative. I don't mean it that way. But one of the feelings I have with a lot of the new Trek shows, and it goes to some of the Abramsverse influence, based on what you said, Alan, is I still feel that they're not always as good of writers as the old Trek people. And I think sometimes they don't understand subtlety. Sometimes show don't tell. So I agree with you, because it was cool if she had gone or whatever. But then Yellow was like, why is this? Oh, because we're friends. Oh, tell him you love him. It went on just a little long to me. And I was kind of thinking, show don't tell. You don't need to hammer it home. And sometimes the new Trek people, to me, they hammer home stuff just a little too much when I think they should pull back. So I felt the same way as you did about that scene. One line of writing, they could have said something, and should have said something like, wow, we were in there for 2 days and they came out and it's only like 30 minutes because they went through another space and time.
Yeah.
Mike, what did you think? Because you like the show a lot more, I think. I liked it. I think you really liked it.
Yeah, I did. I liked that part of it. Okay, I do agree that there are some time anomalies there, and it was kind of a callback to the first season of Deep Space Nine with the tunnel, with the, the wormhole, with the
Mhm.
sort of ethereal aliens that are beyond time, and
Yeah.
that kind of. I just watched that season, so I was kind of aware of that when I was watching it as well. But they come across as very pedantic, sort of Megara-like aliens,
Yeah.
flitting around, sparkling, and all that stuff. But yeah, I thought it was a little too on the nose.
Yeah.
Maybe just a
Mhm.
Yeah.
little bit. But show don't tell. I mean, are telling rather than showing. That's kind of a symptom of a lot of TV these days. It's all over the place. I mean, Doctor Who is like the last few seasons of Doctor Who. I mean, my God. I mean,
It's
that is
really
like one of its major problems is telling rather than showing.
I agree. It's funny you say that because this is stay with me because this is a quick branch. I was listening to several different critics and reviewers talk about the new Indiana Jones movie. And what I thought was so funny is every single person who was over 40 and had children that I listened to, they said something like, I showed my kids the original Raiders of the Lost Ark. And to a person, they said that their kids said that the original Raiders of the Lost Ark was too slow,
Of
which
course.
boggled my mind. Seriously? Seriously. And I guess that's what you're saying, right? It's like there's subtlety and it's got to be fast. And I thought interesting. So I agree with
Well,
what you're saying there.
on that point, I am
Hmm.
clearly over 40. I watched the new Indiana and I just thought the action scenes just went on for so long.
They really
Yeah.
did.
I was like, okay, it's a car chase. You don't have to drag it out for 25 minutes for God's
Right.
sake. But anyway, that's
Yeah.
off topic. So as we talked about earlier, this is episode 5. We are halfway through the season now. What do you think of the season so far? Like, what's your assessment of the first half of the season, and where do you want to see it go in the second half?
I want the next episode to have Boimler and Mariner.
I think that's 2 episodes away, so I'm sorry.
I'd like to see a lot more Una and Uhura at this point.
Yeah.
Definitely. And as for the season so far, I feel like it's pretty strong. I think it's almost as strong as the first half of the first season. I'm not really sure where I'd put it because I didn't really like Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which is a stupid title, by the way. I've just got to get that out there. It's a stupid title.
Well,
I'm sorry. I know it comes from the same Shakespeare quote as All Our Yesterdays, but it makes no sense. It's not even about tomorrows. It's about yesterdays.
Right.
To the past, not the future. And it's not 3 tomorrows. It's 2 yesterdays. And it's just by itself, it makes no sense. And they're like, oh, see what we did. We use the same thing as the quote, the Shakespeare quote from All Our Yesterdays. Isn't it great? And I'm like, no, it's not. It's dumb.
That's
Michael, I am loving it because I don't have to say anything here.
And I just don't care about nostalgic callbacks.
Yeah.
I just don't. I'm just like, please just give me Strange New Worlds. Just take the characters you've already got and go forward. And that's why I'm an advocate for this episode, because it feels there's no way to not tread old ground. I mean, it's almost impossible at this stage, but it feels kind of like it's a unique thing to Strange New Worlds, this Vulcan hijinks thing.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm kind of an advocate for it. So, but I got off track, but the first half was good, but there were a couple of mediocre episodes, and there's been 3 good ones. That's the short answer.
Interesting.
So far, the plots that I really don't like, which includes La'an being Kandani Singh's descendant, his name being used, T'Pring being shown too much. Even when I don't like those plots, I like the acting.
Yeah.
And I like the shows. And so as much as I complain about them, it is strong, and I do like that. It's not like I sit there and go, God, I hate the plot and they can't act. So it's still enjoyable. And to your question, Alan, where I'd like to see it go, I'd really like to see them go somewhere in deep space and discover another civilization that we could get something going on with, like 8472 with Voyager or something or the Dominion. Y'all know how I really don't want to. I don't want the show to end with this freaking Gorn war coming. I'd rather see something else, but I really would like to see something a little more deeply dramatic now. Especially when I
Mhm.
think Pike's going to be back more.
I'd forgotten about the Gorn War.
Well, I don't know. They kept babbling about, oh god, what we're going to do? We might fight the Gorn. So we don't know if that's coming or not. But I'd rather see something else than that.
I hope maybe that just never comes up again.
Well, that's
I'd
got
be
to
fine
be
with
the
that.
that's got to be the season finale.
Boo.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
got to be, and it's going to be a
Boo.
two-parter. So next week, I forget the title of next week. The one after that should be the Boimler and what's her name episode, Mariner. Because we know that it
Interesting.
was one that was directed by Frakes, and so far as we know, that's the only one that Frakes' name is attached to. So it's got to be that one. And then we have 2 episodes left. So that I think that last two-parter
Wow.
is going to be the Gorn War, which means, are we not going to get?
That would only be 9
Angel-
episodes.
Does that mean we're not going to get Angel and Cybok this season? That depresses me because
Yeah.
I hope
That's
they
right.
do.
yeah, I
I
might
hope
be
they do
be
come
missing
back.
something in my count, but they're the thing that I'm most excited to see.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I
I'd
hadn't read
forgotten,
ahead to
but
even
yeah.
think. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I've forgotten about him. That's a good thing. I had a real quick question. This whole phenomenon that they were exploring, they said it was it was in the Vulcan sector. Why hadn't the Vulcans examined it before now? I was real curious about that because they were like, well, we're headed to Vulcan. Oh, we've been ordered to go do this thingamajig. I think, yeah, the Vulcan has their own defense fleet. I mean, has that thing that tunnel been sitting there? I mean, I know in Enterprise they said the Vulcans don't randomly explore, but it's in their sector. I can't believe they wouldn't have gone because they kept talking about it was giving off all this weird energy. And I kept thinking the Vulcans should have explored that by now.
Well, that's a good point, Keith.
Yeah, that
And
may
one
be a
other quick-
flaw.
Yeah. And one other quick last thought I had was, and I actually wrote this, Sarek sucks. The deal is, at the end of the day, he chose to marry and mate with a human woman.
Right.
And then he spends his entire life disapproving of his half-human son. And I think he might even be worse than Worf, who wasn't all that happy with Alexander, who didn't want to be a warrior. And he's such a kind of a coward. He doesn't even show up for this whole wedding thing because they're like, well, he's still mad at Spock and they're not speaking. Like, dude, that is emotional as a human. And you want to, Vulcans want to say they're better than us. He's basically pouting about his son. And that kind of sucks.
Yeah. But at the same time, had we gotten Sarek in this episode, I don't think we would have seen as much of Amanda. So I'm thankful that we got what we did of her, because I think that we got to see a lot of stuff about her that we didn't ever have seen before, you know?
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. And I just love Mia Kirshner. I think she's fantastic.
She is.
Good mother-son moments. I really enjoy that. I really
Yeah. You know, Spock is such a mama's boy.
Right.
Although
And also there was go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go right ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say this episode produced my favorite Ortega's line. I hate analogies. They never turn out like people say they will.
Yes. Yes. Dude, I freaking love Ortegas.
I thought that was funny.
I need to see a like an Ortegas focus episode.
Yes.
Yeah, and I also liked when she was basically joking. I got a paraphrase. She says something to the effect of, "I'm actually the one arguing caution."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I thought that was pretty good. Alan, you said about Spock's mom. I will say this: is Kirshner with her quiet strength is reminding me, even though she doesn't look the same, because I don't remember. No, I hope nobody gets offended. I don't remember kind of bucking my eyes this much at Jane Wyman, but she, because I'm like, man, Spock, your mom. Like, dude. Sorry, I gotta say that, like, dude. But Alan, based on what you said, her quiet strength absolutely reminds me of Jane Wyman's quiet strength in the original series, because she always had just the strength about her, because she had to deal with Sarek and Spock, and now you realize pretty much all her Vulcan neighbors and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
All her Vulcan neighbors.
All the Karens.
All the Vulcan Miss Kravitzes.
What's a Vulcan Karen? That's funny, Veronica.
On that note, all right. Thank you, Michael, for joining us this week. It was a pleasure to have you.
Great being here. I enjoyed it.
And one more time, tell us where people can find info about you and about your book.
Yes, it's michaelscottphillipsauthor.com. That's the best place to go. And I'm also on Twitter and Facebook and various social media. So,
Right on. Keith, where can people find more about you?
You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups. And I guess I need to check out Threads and Mastodon because everybody else is, but more on that later.
I'm on Threads.
Okay.
Don't worry about Mastodon. Nobody gave a crap about that.
Okay.
So, Veronica, I know that you and Chuck are doing all kinds of things. So give us a little hint about what's going on.
Yeah, so we are Felt Nerdy, feltnerdy.com, nerdy puppet shows, primarily Star Trek and Doctor Who. We have an adult show coming up if you're in the Atlanta area on July 22nd. It's the Sinful Variety Show at the Red Light Cafe. And then we have several shows coming up at Dragon Con, specific times TBA. So keep an eye on our Facebook page. Feltnerdy.com takes you there. And then we also have another podcast, Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
Any good guests on that show recently?
Yeah. We had a fun interview with a longtime fan and talked to her about growing up in the fan community from the time of newsletters to being introduced to message boards and Facebook groups, and just her realizing how many fans there are out there.
Yeah. Excellent. And you can find more of my crazy nonsense at cosmiccreative.com, KOZMIC creative.com. I've got some books that I've written, a few books that I've published from other authors, and my other podcasts, which includes Modern Musicology. And we've had some really good interviews lately. Tommy Stinson, who is best known from his time in The Replacements. He was also in Soul Asylum. He was also in Guns N' Roses. And he's got a solo album out now that we talked to him a lot about. And we've been getting some great feedback from that episode. And we got a couple of other things coming up. So check out Modern Musicology. Most of us, well, half of us will be back next Thursday because I won't be here. So maybe, Michael, you can join us again. I don't know. But the show will be back next Thursday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern to talk about episode 6 of Strange New World Season 2. Until then, keep trekking. Have a great week. And Veronica, close us out.
This podcast is logical.
That might be overstating the matter. All right, everybody, take care and keep trekking on.
Later.